It's Thursday, May 8th, 2025. Trump has a new Surgeon General nominee, getting predators off the street, and black smoke at the Vatican next on the AM Update.
If you harm our children, you will be given no sanctuary.
But yes, there is a need to be able to give an opportunity for someone to be able to make an argument before they're removed in the country.
Everything that I said there applied as much to the previous American administration as it did any government in Europe.
I think I'm going to be sitting on a waiting line at United, waiting, 30,000 people are waiting. That's the only way you can get around. No apologies for that.
The one thing we know they're not doing is checking Instagram.
There ultimately will be an interview, either voluntarily or involuntarily.
President Trump said on Truth Social last night, today is the day. Later this morning, he's going to be announcing a big major trade deal with a quote-unquote highly respected country. More on that in just a little bit. But first, Trump also announced yesterday that he's withdrawing his Surgeon General pick for a new one. He had nominated Dr. Jeanette Nesheiwat. He is withdrawing her and instead nominating Dr. Casey Means. Dr. Means, of course, is a holistic medicine physician and has been focused on supporting metabolic health and preventing chronic diseases. Trump said in a post on Truth Social, quote, her academic achievements together with her life's work are absolutely outstanding. Dr. Casey Means has the potential to be one of the finest surgeon generals in United States history. Congratulations to Casey. I've seen a lot of people I love and respect say this is a terrible pick. I've seen a lot of people I love and respect say this is one of the best picks ever. I say, can't hurt. It's a lot better. I think Janet Nesheiwat was universally panned as probably one of Trump's worst nominations in his original round of nominations. And that was in a crop of picks and nominations that were generally filled with pretty good and competent people. But I think this one has the chance to be a lot better than Dr. Jeanette Nesheiwat. In other news, Sash Patel, FBI director, along with AG Pam Bondi, announced the arrest of 200 plus child predators. Here is Director Patel.
Our children. If you harm our children, you will be given no sanctuary. There is no place we will not come to hunt you down. There is no place we will not look for you. And there is no cage we will not put you in should you do harm to our children. The prioritization of this administration and General Bondi has made it abundantly clear to child predators, you will be hunted down and you will be prosecuted.
200 plus child predators now off the street in a period of about 5 days. That's incredible news, and that's something we obviously would not have and did not get under the Biden administration. Hours after more than 100 masked anti-Israel agitators stormed the Butler Library at Columbia University in New York City, pushing past campus security as students prepared for finals Wednesday afternoon. College officials summoned the New York Police Department in an effort to subdue the unruly mob. At least 30 people were arrested, with more expected. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement was also monitoring the situation. If any other arrests are made, the suspects will be fingerprinted to determine if they are non-citizens. One Immigration and Customs Enforcement source told Fox News it was time to make a point at that demonstration at Columbia. Another day, another pro-Hamas, anti-Israel rally on one of the nation's, what used to be foremost institution. In Congress, Congressman Chip Roy has written a letter to Speaker Mike Johnson with 5 ideas and requests for the upcoming reconciliation package. Here are Congressman Roy's ideas. He wants to eliminate illegal aliens' eligibility to challenge immigration court orders. He wants to ensure new immigration judges and staff shouldn't stay on the payroll forever. He wants to fine sanctuary jurisdictions obstructing Immigration and Customs Enforcement. He wants to establish the Election Integrity Office at the Department of Justice. And he wants to reimburse the state of Texas and others for performing the federal government's border security duties during the Biden administration. Those are 5 really good ideas. Elsewhere in the Congress, Thomas Massey of Kentucky says that House leadership canceled votes originally set for this week to cut the wasteful spending found by DOJ. Massey said, quote, USAID and other programs like PBS and NPR were to be targeted. The votes were quietly canceled. Man alive. If you think that's bad, let's go over to the Senate. Here is Oklahoma Senator James Lankford on the so-called due process for illegal aliens. He's talking on CNN.
What's been confusing on this is some people see due process like as an American citizen. That's a right to a jury trial. That's all those different things. That's not true for due process for someone who's not a citizen of the United States. It's a different process. It's often just literally what people call an immigration judge is not a typical federal judge or a state judge. This is someone that's in the bureaucracy, that their task for DHS is that task on it. So they're a government employee career. That's an immigration judge. So it's a very different process for it. But yes, there's a need to be able to give an opportunity for someone to be able to make an argument before they're removed in the country.
Let me shorten that a little bit for you. James Lankford, the good senator from Oklahoma, said, quote, humana, 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 here's the talking points that you want to hear. Illegal aliens deserve due process. I mean, I am absolutely shocked. Shocked, I tell you. The Republican senator from Oklahoma who handed the Democrats a phony talking point on their worst issue in the middle of the election year. He's now saying that people who entered the country illegally, not following any sort of due process, are now owed some sort of due process. What a freaking fake, phony, this just... The only party that hates you more than the Democrats are the Republicans. This guy is a freaking joke, along with most of the other senators. Well, I teased this at the top. President Trump said in a post on Truth Social last night, quote, big news conference tomorrow, that would be today, at 10 a.m., the Oval Office, concerning a major trade deal with representatives of a big and highly respected country, the first of many. This comes on news that U.S. and Chinese officials are going to meet later this week for their first formal economic talks since President Trump announced those sweeping tariffs on China and triggered a trade war. The trade war between the world's two largest economies, of course, has put some question marks, we'll call it that, into global supply chains. Washington and Beijing have been embroiled in tit-for-tat tariffs, of course, since last month's Liberation Day announcement of tariffs. Here is Secretary of the Treasury again, for the fourth time this week, or fifth time, I can't remember, Scott Bessent being questioned by Maxine Waters about whether or not he let DOJ access sensitive systems at the Treasury.
So let me just say,
DOJ employees.
Please, you can't filibuster here. This is not the filibuster playground. And so what you did was you let these strangers into our Treasury with access to all of the data, all of the personnel information, and you just opened the door. Why'd you do that?
No, ma'am. They were Treasury employees.
Uh-oh. At the very beginning of that hearing in Congress, the House of Representatives, Treasury Secretary Bessent reminded Maxine Waters that they had run into each other and spent some time together once, many years ago, at a New Year's Eve party in the Bahamas. And Maxine Waters declared that she had no memory of that interaction. And so she just goes into this thinking, hey, this Treasury Secretary, he's probably a Trump sycophant. Let me just try to railroad him. You could hear that there. She was caught off guard by those comments because she said she had no recollection of ever having met Scott Bessent before. Checking in on Bernie Sanders, he appeared on Fox News last night. And on the topic of spending money on private jets, it's a pretty predictable response.
How do you push back on both of those things?
When's the last time you saw Donald Trump during a campaign mode at National Airport?
No. It doesn't. But he's also not fighting the oligarchy.
No. You run a campaign and you do 3 or 4 or 5 rallies in a week. The only way you can get around to talk to 30,000 people. Think I'm going to be sitting on a waiting line at United waiting, 30,000 people are waiting? That's the only way you can get around. No apologies for that.
You think I'm going to ride United like all the great unwashed out there? While I fly back and forth between my 15 houses and speak to tens of thousands of people? No apologies. I can't live like that. Who can live like that? Let's check in on Mike Pence for the second time this week. He has a curious idea about what constitutes the American dream.
Said that cheap goods was not a part of the American dream. Well, I'm somebody who spent almost my entire life in public service. We lived on our paycheck while we raised 3 kids and put 3 kids through college. Cheap goods are a big part of it. I think we ought to be candid about it.
Cheap goods are part of the American dream. He also said there, we lived on our paycheck while I was serving in public office. Yes, everyone lives on their paycheck, Mike. What is he going to say next? Microplastics in your testes and ovaries are part of the American dream? Give me a break. When we come back, you'll never guess again. CBS News had an interesting choice of words for the College of Cardinals convening this week for their conclave. Disney, they're building a new theme park. We'll tell you about that, and we'll also remind you what they were saying about 3 years ago. Senator Rand Paul says Anthony Fauci is going to have to come back to Washington kicking or screaming. We'll tell you about all that and more next.
So they sit the whole time? They don't stand up and
most of them will tell you that while that's going on, they're sitting reading their breviary. That's a book of prayers that clergy have, or praying a rosary, or doing. The one thing we know they're not doing is checking Instagram, because their devices have all been confiscated.
I believe the kids call it raw dogging it if you're going to go through a long period of time with no electronic device.
Yeah. That is CBS News' coverage of the College of Cardinals and their conclave. Lots of cuz in there. That is their coverage of the Cardinals convening for the first time yesterday at the Sistine Chapel as they attempt to find a new pope for the Catholic Church. They're not on their electronic devices. CBS News refers to that as raw dogging the conclave. That's a very interesting choice of words. Black smoke rose from the chimneys at the Sistine Chapel. The Catholic Church still looking for a pope.
Brittany Lyle, Carolyn Peck. Now, normally at this time, we would take a look back at the first half, but there are things bigger than basketball that need to be addressed at this time. Our friends, our family, our coworkers, the players and coaches in our community are hurting right now. And at 3 o'clock, about 8 minutes ago, our LGBTQIA plus teammates at Disney asked for our solidarity and support, including our company's support, in opposition to the parental rights in education bill in the state of Florida and similar legislation across the United States.
And a threat to any human rights is a threat to all human rights. And at this time, Courtney and I, we're going to take a pause from our broadcast to show our love and support for our friends, our families, and our colleagues.
As Outkick.com's Clay Travis pointed out, that was just 3 years ago during coverage by ESPN, that would be Disney-owned ESPN, of a women's college basketball matchup. Taking a moment of silence for the so-called Don't Say Gay bill that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis had just passed in that state 3 years ago. Of course, it was not a Don't Say Gay bill. It was just keep your sexual lives out of our children's lives bill. Again, that was a moment of silence for that bill on Disney-owned ESPN. Well, Disney this week announced they're opening up a new theme park in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. Homosexuality in Abu Dhabi is illegal, punishable by up to 14 years in prison. Cross-dressing includes fines, imprisonment. Same-sex marriage, that would be homosexual marriage, banned. Marriage is defined as between a man and a woman. Blood donations, of course, men who engage in sodomy are banned from donating blood. Just a few of the laws on the books when it comes to homosexuality in the United Arab Emirates. But Disney had no thoughts on that as they announced their new theme park in Abu Dhabi. Senator Rand Paul, who has made Anthony Fauci his B-word on a number of occasions, especially early on in COVID through that pandemic, he says that as the information comes in and the evidence comes in that Anthony Fauci and his cadre of shadowy figures actually did engage in funding gain-of-function research, he says Anthony Fauci is going to have to come back to the Congress whether he likes it or not. Paul made these comments on Newsmax the other night.
You know, we're excited about the Trump administration actually helping. We've been through several years of the Biden administration actually trying to hide the ball, covering up what had happened, obscuring the truth, and really refusing to give any records concerning this. I've been trying for over 3 years to get non-classified records about the decision to fund the research in Wuhan, and it's been denied. But I can tell you, under Secretary Kennedy, under Jay Bhattacharya, the records are beginning to flow. And what we're discovering is, yes, they did debate over whether or not it was gain of function. Fauci said everybody said it was not gain of function. Well, we're going to get to the bottom of this. And ultimately, Dr. Fauci is going to need to come back in and explain why he made this decision. There ultimately will be an interview, either voluntarily or involuntarily. If he won't come, he will have to come back and explain to the American people why he decided to fund this research in China. This may be one of the greatest medical errors in modern history, and he bears a large part of the responsibility for this.
Sure. I agree with a lot of what Kentucky Senator Rand Paul said there, except for at the very end. This is the biggest error, if you want to even call it error. This is the biggest error in modern medical history. So, Rand Paul says Anthony Fauci, kicking or screaming, whether he likes it or not, needs to come back to Congress and answer to the American people on gain-of-function research. Do you think that is ever going to happen? I have my doubts. And finally, our poll of the week. I asked you, after 100 days, which of Trump's appointments do you think is doing the most lasting damage to the swamp? I gave you 3 options and the ability to chime in with your own answer. We actually have a tie for second place. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. tied in second place at 25.6%. And most of you agreed with me. 39.2% said Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. I laid out my reasoning for why I think I would nominate him as much as you can as a cabinet level or confirmation level appointee. I think Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is doing the most lasting change right now. How lasting that will be, I did not define. I allowed you to do that. And boy, howdy, a lot of you have some thoughts. Jim says none of them are having any lasting damage or doing any lasting damage to the swamp if the GOP doesn't start codifying these executive orders. Correct. Jabba Jim says none of the above until Congress gets their collective feces coherently coagulated. This is all just deck chairs on the Titanic. Correct. Alex says Doge and company. Okay, I can see that. Doge may be doing some lasting damage to the swamp, at least in terms of exposing what your money has been funding. Sudden adult death season says, as mentioned, 100 days in, we are merely seeing the flag fly in our direction. The swamp won't let most of these changes stand, which is why judges are getting involved. Gerald says the 3 options have all been great, and there are reasons to view for each of them, but it has to be Noam or whoever it is that has ultimate authority over the border. No area has had the success of the border. With the inflow stopped, Homan can make a huge difference. That's a good answer, Gerald. Matt says that the voting results are evenly split is a good sign. Yeah, we had a perfectly even split for second place, a tie for second place, and I had several hundred vote in this poll, so it's not like there were 10 people who voted here. Let's go to this. Chuck says Pam Bondi and Kash Patel by far the most disappointing. Tom says all 3 choices are disruptors, but Hegseth is upending the status quo in the military, which is good news and with little resistance from the swamp. Yeah, because you can't tell the commander-in-chief that he can't command his military. I think that's one of the reasons why you're seeing less resistance from the swamp. It's just hard to message that, even through the judicial tyranny. Lisa says Elon's Doge. Adam says RFK if he's able to get charges on Fauci. Cyclone says Elon. Mike says, I think Trump is doing the most damage by not pushing Congress and applying pressure to codify anything and is setting the table to be a lame duck. Ruli says none. Rhino says none. Brett says LOL. MJ says none. Andrew says Doge. NK says damage to the swamp. Laughing, crying out loud, laughing emoji 5 times over. Mind Your Business says none of them are. Linda says still a lot of work to do, but Hegseth. Craig says there's no lasting damage being done. And Nota says people underestimate the damage that our military leaders can do. Illegal vaccine mandates started with the military because of weak leaders. So it sounds like on further review, sounds like this would probably be the order of finish. Number 1, no lasting damage is being done because Congress is not doing anything. That would probably be the number 1 result. Number 2 would maybe be a tie between Pete Hegseth and Doge. And number 3, basically anybody else. Good stuff. I appreciate each of your answers, negative or positive as they were. Tomorrow is another edition of Ask or Tell Me Anything. You can ask me any question you want. Tell me any news story you think needs covered on the AM Update. Make your submissions on X at Real AM Update. Look for the pinned post. Hope you have a wonderful Thursday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.